we have with us Mr. Nitin Shah, who will answer your doubts and questions regarding the cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy approach that we at ICHARS follow. Before we begin, I would like to quickly introduce our organization. ICHARS is dedicated to enabling coaches and mental health practitioners to develop advanced coaching and therapeutic skills with comprehensive step-by-step trainings, ongoing support, and mentorship. If you are a coach or a mental health practitioner looking for practical and structured techniques that adapts to the requirement of your clients, you would love the courses that are courses offered by ICHARS. To learn more about the available courses, we invite you to visit the ICHARS website or get in touch with our course coordinator. An integral part of ICHARS, that is ICHARS Support Foundation. It is a non-profit organization with a clear mission to establish a holistic network that connects, supports, and empowers stakeholders within the mental health landscape. These stakeholders encompass a diverse range, including the general public, psychologists, psychology students, NGOs, and government bodies. There are multiple initiatives that ICHARS Support Foundation undertakes time to time. The ongoing initiative includes Project Mehak, which is mental and emotional health awareness through knowledge. And it is an initiative to facilitate the destigmatizing of mental health, creating awareness about the importance of mental health, and providing effective tools and techniques that can be applied by people at large to stay emotionally and mentally healthy. The next is Project Rainshine, where we train and mentor staff of NGOs with skills to provide mental health first aid to their beneficiaries and connect them to mental health practitioners, where the practitioners are trained by ICHARS to offer advanced mental health support where required. The next is Visit MHP. It is a peer learning and a support community for psychologists and psychology students. We conduct monthly therapeutic case discussions and webinars for psychologists and psychology students and offer additional learning resources like worksheets, pre-recorded courses, and more. We also offer subsidized therapy to psychology students by practitioners who have undergone advanced training. The first discovery session is free and the subsequent sessions are highly subsidized. So if you are a psychology student looking to benefit from this, fill the form. We'll be sharing you all in the chat box. Also, every month we host webinars, workshops, and contests on various psychology related topics. So keep an eye on our social media channels, that is ICHARS Online and Visit MHP for announcement about the same. Now, a quick introduction about our expert. Nitin Shah is the CEO of ICHARS and Director of ICHARS Support Foundation. He is also one of the few people in the world who have been able to seamlessly integrate different approaches of psychology, be it cognitive, behavioral, humanistic, and psychodynamics into a comprehensive eclectic approach and offered it as a structure course. Today we have with us our psychology interns who would be asking their doubts related to the masterclass of eclectic psychotherapy approach. I would like to request our viewers who are watching us on the social platforms to put their questions in the comment box and we will surely take them up. So, sir, should we start our first question for today?
Yes, we can, Shifu.
All right. So the first question, how to handle the fear of death?
Okay. So, a lot of times when clients come to us with this particular fear, check whether the fear is the fear of death or is it the fear of what will happen once they die to people that they leave behind. Because these are two different fears. While they may still say it's the fear of death, but the objectives are different. If the client says that it is about me dying, right? Then whatever is the religious, spiritual, evolutionary theory that they are involved in can be used in combination with hypnosis to help them feel more comfortable with the idea of things coming to an end. But if it's more about people that they will leave behind, then there would be a component of planning and what they are doing to ensure that people who they leave behind are in a better state as compared to what their current worries about them are, and also be able to have confidence in those people's states to be able to manage their own lives. Now, this is more conceptual. What do we do in terms of process? For fear of death, your own death, and it's when it's not related to what we will leave behind. This is probably one place where if someone believes in past life regression comes handy, because when they see people dying, taking a birth, dying, taking a birth, dying, taking a birth, it becomes like a, one of those things where you sleep, you wake up. So just the repetition of it can make them feel more comfortable with the idea that this is not the end. That is what they're worried about, right? This is if they believe in past life. Obviously, if they don't believe in past life, there will be an alternate theory that they believe in terms of what happens with evolution, what happens after death. Make use of that philosophy in a hypnotic state. You can also use levels of transformation in combination with positive suggestions about being more focused on creating meaning about life when they are alive. These two would generally be enough to help them feel more comfortable about themselves. As far as who they would leave behind, soft C, when then statement, anchoring, and again levels of transformation. These four things together will help people generally address the fear of what will happen to people after the death.
So the next question, if someone is addicted to mobile phones, especially social media at age of 24, then what will be the appropriate approach for counseling in practice?
Okay. You will begin with the soft C, define the current situation, which is the challenge, the desired outcome. What are the benefits of letting go of that addiction? Once the client is able to think about that future that they're trying to create by letting go of the addiction, that's where the motivation will come from. Then currently, what are the trigger points for addiction? What are the trigger points when they go back to their phone and they start scrolling? Identify those trigger points. With each trigger point, create a when-then statement and anchor to be able to help them address that particular trigger. So currently, so example, there are many people who will tell you that, you know what, when I start doing something which is difficult, then I say, चलना थोड़ा break ले लेते हैं. And then I take a break, and with that break, I start scrolling the phone, and then that break just keeps continuing. It doesn't end. So when did we start? The moment I came across something that was difficult for me to do. What was my thought? Tell, let me take a break. What was I looking for? Relief. Now, what should be the new emotion that you would like to experience? That will actually help you avoid that phone. And what will be the when then state? What will be the new thought? So that new emotion will become the anchor, the new thought will become the when then statement. In most cases, this should be a good starting point. But then there would come the question of secondary gain, which is where you will bring in reframing. So with specific triggers where when then statement and anchoring has not worked, you will then transition to end step reframing, help them identify the positive intention, address the positive intention. These three things together should generally be enough to help people move beyond the social media addiction. Again, you have to recognize when we talk about social media addiction, that's a blanket term. There could be someone who's just talking an X and they're calling it a social media addiction. Then in that case, the processes will change because it's no longer just about passing time by or getting relief by scrolling the phone. There is another motive altogether that you want to address. Then the sequence of techniques may change.
So the next question, as per our priority is to enable counselee to make decision himself, but still he is confusing what should counselor do.
Help them address that confusion. So when a client comes to you saying that I want to make a decision, right? And they're confused about that decision, there are a couple of things that can happen. The first thing is the client is not clear about the pros and cons of the choices. So because they're not aware of the pros and cons of the choices, they're objectively not able to make a choice. So your first step will be to help them recognize the pros and cons. Now, once you do the pro and con list, in most cases, the client will end up telling you, so I know what I should do, but I don't think I'm capable of doing. So now when they say I'm not able to make a decision or I'm confused, the confusion is not about what decision to make. The confusion really is whether I will be able to do it. For example, someone who comes and tells you that, you know what, I want to earn more money, and I'm confused between should I continue with my job or should I start a business? You sit with them, you create a complete pros and cons list, and they came to a place where they realize, given the kind of work that I want to do and the money that I want to earn, business will be a better idea. But I don't know whether I have the skills to run a business or not. Now, the question is not about decision. Now they are going into, I'm not sure whether I can implement the decision that I think I should be taking. This changes the nature of work now. So you help them take the decision. While they're taking the decision, tell them right now the question is not whether you can do it or not do it. We will come to it later on. Most people struggle to make a decision because they are worried about their ability to implement the decision. So separate the two. Tell them, let's just first make a decision. What is it that ideally, objectively, you should be doing? Once they make that decision, now what is stopping you from executing these decisions? What is executing them will take you back to lack of skills, lack of clarity, lack of resources, mental state. So I know I should set up a business, but I don't know how to set up a business. I know I should set up a business, but I don't have the skills to set up a business. I know I should set up a business, but I don't have the skills to set up a business. I have all of these three, but I keep getting scared. What if I fail? So mental state. Now, once they've made a decision, then what you need to do is you have a streamlined process for that. Lack of clarity, lack of skills, lack of resources, help them create a chunk down task list. What steps do they need to take to get clarity? What steps do they need to take to develop skills? What steps do they need to take to develop resources? And then for mental state, when then anchoring starting point, subsequently reframing, transformational metaphor, levels of transformation. And if there are deep rooted fears, then energy. That will be your overall process. What I'm bringing to your awareness is when a client says I'm confused, don't work on an assumption that the confusion is about what decision to make. For most people, the confusion is about whether I will be able to implement a decision once I take it. So segregate these two things. And this you will find in multiple cases. People will come and tell you, I'm not sure whether I should continue in my current relationship or not. And when they make an objective decision, and then if they make a decision to stay with the partner, but I don't know how would I tolerate this person. How can be achieved later on? The question is, would you like to? Once you've made that decision that in the current scheme of things, being in this relationship is far better for me than to move out of the relationship. Now, if the question is, I want to be with this person, but I get very angry looking at them, a therapist can help you address that anger so that you can make this decision work for you. There could also be a situation where someone says, what, given the circumstances, I don't think I and my partner gel with each other. We want completely different things from our lives. So ideally, I should move out of this relationship. But I'm scared. I will be all left alone. I'll be lonely in my life. I don't know if I'll find someone else in my life after this or not. So once you've made that, once you've recognized, ideally, I need to move out. Decision is made. Now the question is, how do I develop the confidence to be able to find someone else? What do I need to do to ensure that I am someone who people want to be with, that others would want to get into a relationship with? What steps can I take to ensure that my subsequent relationships succeed? And how do I become comfortable with the idea of not being in a relationship also? Because you don't want the client to jump from one relationship to another only for the sake of jumping into a relationship, right? So those are all subsequent steps of how do you help the client implement the decision. That's not where decision making is a problem. I hope this distinction is clear for all of
you. Next, how to treat guilt because of irritational reason behind it. Sorry, irrational reason behind it.
For all irrational emotions, which are irrational as per client, not as per you. So if a client says, I feel guilty and I have a justified reason to feel guilty, then it's not irrational because for the client, it's still rational. But if the guilt is really irrational, then what you need to do is a modified version of Fast Phobia Cure. Help the client recognize the story that plays in their mind, which triggers the guilt. Help them change that story, and the irrational guilt will go away. It's irrational from the point of view of the client also. Then a modified version of fast to get cure. If the client feels they are justified to have that guilt, then you will do a combination of identifying what the client can learn. So probably a perceptual position, so that the client can go back, witness what mistakes they've made as per their understanding, what they can learn from it, so that they don't repeat the same mistakes again in future. So perceptual positions to learn, when in statement, to let go of the past guilt, and to implement the new learnings going forward, and anchoring to replace the guilt with whatever new emotion they want to replace it with. If the guilt is rational, then you will need to do this. This should be enough. Okay. But the focus will be on the client learning, so that the client does not repeat the same mistake again.
Next, what is double dissociation?
Okay. So double dissociation is used in multiple processes related to intense, irrational, negative emotion. Why? Because when people are experiencing memory as if it's happening right now, they feel the emotion to the fullest. Now, when you are working with trauma, for example, you don't want the client to experience the trauma while you help them work with trauma. Then it will become very difficult for them. So you need them to be able to reprocess the memory, but in a state where they are not experiencing the memory. That's where disassociation and double dissociation comes up. So what is the disassociation first? Okay, so simplistically speaking, let's say I want to imagine myself delivering on a stage. So if I'm imagining myself on a stage and I'm seeing the audience through my eyes, that means I'm not able to see myself. I'm imagining that situation from within my own body. That's association. I'm associated in myself and I'm seeing what I will see from my real life. Disassociation will be I see myself delivering a speech on a stage. So I am able to see myself. This is where I am. This is where I'm on the stage. I am witnessing myself on the stage. So disassociation. And double disassociation is where I'm seeing myself, looking at myself on the stage. So double disassociation. There are three versions of me. I'm able to see two of me. And the third is where I am. Now you can replace this even with when you are working with intense negative emotion. I see myself looking at myself going through traumatic experience. Double disassociation. So there is more distance. And that distance reduces the intensity of the emotion that I would experience. In all processes related to intense negative emotions, disassociation or double disassociation will inherently be used. It's very, very rare for us to make the client relive a memory where they experienced intense negative emotion while being associated. So that's double dissociation.
So the next question, how to deal with guilt and how does it affect us in our daily life, and how do we identify that it is suppressed guilt that is affecting us in the first place?
So we already spoke about how to work with guilt. As far as how do we identify that it's a suppressed guilt? Well, if constantly you keep feeling that I'll make a mistake, that I've done something wrong will happen because of me, that will either be because of fear or will be because of guilt. Right? So, how do you identify? The simplest way will be if there's something that you want to do that you are not doing, then something is holding you back. In most cases, what is holding you back will boil down to either guilt or anger.
So the next, why do we get panic attacks and how to identify that it is panic attack or not, as it's different for everybody, and what all cause these panic attacks?
Okay. So, whenever you have intense anxiety to an extent where you're observing bodily response, right? So, there's palpitation in heart, Your hands and legs are beginning to shake. So something where the anxiety has reached a state where your body is beginning to respond to that. That would be a sign of at least some degree of panic attack seeking in. How do you work with that? Uh, if the panic attack is very intense and it's very frequent, visit a psychiatrist first. Take the medication. The medication will at least help you stabilize. Then continue with therapy. Now, as a therapist, when a client comes to you saying that I'm already taking medication for panic attacks and yet I'm experiencing intense anxiety from time to time and I'm seeking help, then what do you do with them? You will begin with the soft C. So that will be the standard. Identification of triggers will still be there, but generally when then will not be enough. It will be a good idea from here to jump into any of the deep-rooted emotional issues, which will then mean delayering. And from delayering, you'll either go into Ho'oponopono or hypnodrama or inner child, depending upon what the delayed issue turns out to be. Yeah. Now, once you've done this, then once again, look at the triggers. And whatever are the final triggers left where the client says that, you know what, now the intensity of issues have come down, but there are still some degree of anxiety or worry that I experience. Finally, for those, do when-then statement. So here the when-then statement is being done towards the end, once the intensity of the primary emotion has been controlled to a large extent through delayering and inner child and other processes.
Okay. The next question: is it possible to treat bipolar without a psychiatrist and just counseling and therapy?
If the question is it possible? Probably possible is everything. I'm not someone who's going to say it's not possible. Is it recommended? The answer is no. Why would you want to take a chance? See, when you work with clients, primarily you work on the principle of safety first, right? So if you know that the client has a diagnosed disorder, where at least the medication will help them feel more stable, why wouldn't you want to take help of that? I understand you don't want the client to get dependent on the medication. I also understand that you don't want the client to only use medication and not use therapy. All of that is understood, right? But to not want to have medication at all is going from one extreme to another, which I don't think is worth taking a risk for. Okay? So just to answer your question again, is it possible? Probably yes, in some cases. Is it worth taking a risk? The answer is no. Shifa, you're mute.
That was the last question.
All right. Okay. Any other questions that any of you would like to ask? Any follow-up questions? No questions?
So as you said, if someone have fear of death, then we can consider what religion they follow or if they are spiritual. So we are kind of taking the culture in context. So except fear of death, there are any other condition where we take the culture in context by therapy?
See, so what happens is, again, in traditional therapy, the answer would be yes. You will want to take culture and context in uh, you want to keep that in mind with every client that you work with. The difference is in the way we work, because there isn't any suggestion that we are giving from our side. Everything comes from the client, and where the client doesn't have an answer, we use a hypnotic process to help the client recognize what insights are generated from their own system, right? Any insight that the client gives you will already be culturally contextualized to their culture because it's coming from them. So we are not really as concerned and as worried about this in all other forms of approaches. Even over here, when I said, depending upon what the client believes in, as long as you are not suggesting a form of therapy to the client, and you begin by asking the client, all right, so what is your understanding about life and death? Once the client starts giving you those answers, whatever that cultural contextualization needs to be will automatically take place because the client is giving you those answers, and based on those answers, then you are actually designing your therapy processes, right? So what I'm trying to clarify is, classically, it is believed that people need to understand about a client's culture before you can work with them, because that's the only way of being culturally sensitive towards them, right?
Yes.
In our case, that's not true, because that cultural sensitivity will come in where judgments come in, right? Because the client then starts feeling judged for their cultures because you don't understand their culture. In the way we work, there is no scope of judgment, because there's nothing else that we are doing except for either asking clients questions where the client gives you an answer, or inducing them in a hypnotic state and then helping them explore and elaborate on what's happening in their life, which still means all the work and all the assessments are being done by the clients themselves. You are not really making any assessments on your part. That then means again that the cultural sensitivity is already addressed. So even if you don't know anything about the client's culture, in the way we work, as long as you understand the client's language, you should be able to work with them without worrying about the cultural sensitivity. But that's specific to the way we work, right? Again, to give you an example, take dream interpretation. If you are a therapist who interprets the client's dream, then you need to know about the client's background, the client's culture, the client's religion, how those symbols that their mind has generated in their dreams are culturally interpreted in their system, because you are interpreting it for them. But in the way we work, we will not interpret any of this. We will guide the client in a hypnotic state, help the client go back to that dream, help the client identify the symbols, and then ask the client's unconscious. Since the unconscious created these symbols, in a few moments, the unconscious will help you understand what these symbols represent. Now, since the interpretation is coming from the client, did I really need to know what the interpretation was in the first place?
No,
The answer
sir.
is no. So, do I really need to know about the client's culture in that sense?
No.
There is no.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is one more question. At times client have breakdown, right? So what if, like, I'm very sensitive and when I see someone cry, even I get very emotional. So where do I draw the line where I'm also empathizing, but I'm also not getting like way too emotional than I need to be?
Okay. So, and how do you understand whether you're crossing over from empathy to sympathy? Right? The answer would be, the moment you feel that a client session is now interfering with your day-to-day life, which means you're carrying forward the imprints of the session outside the session. Okay? Then you're beginning to get sucked into the client's story. Right? That's a problem. So the moment you start witnessing that, even if it happens with one client, when it happens with one client and it's not happening with other clients, that means there's something about that particular client or that particular client's experiences that have resonated with you. And therefore, you got so intrinsically affected by it. Now, if that's the case, then that's still something that your system is bringing up for you to identify, address, and resolve. Go to a therapist. This is not a skill issue, because with most of the clients, you are not facing the same challenge. This is more of a resonance issue, because probably there is some unhealed part of you that is beginning to get triggered because of it. But if it's happening repetitively with multiple clients, then it could be a skill issue. Then it's more a question of what process you're following. Maybe a fine tuning in that process is required. Then undergoing a training program that actually helps you develop more a sense of detachment while remaining empathetic with the client will be more useful, right? If you ask me, join CHCP. That's the best course that you can attend. But I'm sure there would be other courses also.
Okay, thank you,
Just
sir.
give me 1 second. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, any other questions? No other questions?
गुड इवनिंग सर।
गुड इवनिंग पुष्पाल।
यस सर। सर मेरा एक्चुअली क्वेश्चन तो नहीं, मुझे ना सजेशन चाहिए एक चीज़ के लिए। जैसे ना सर, मेरा एक फ्रेंड है और उसने बताया कि उसकी जो सिस्टर है ना वो डिप्रेशन में है शायद। तो जब रीज़न मैंने पता किया तो रीज़न ये था कि अ, उन्होंने बताया कि आज से 5-6 साल पहले जब वो 10th क्लास में थी तो उसकी एक फ्रेंड थी, उसकी डेथ हो गई थी। और उसके बाद से उसका ऐसा बिहेवियर है, ना वो किसी के साथ बोलती है ना कोई ज्यादा काम करती है। मतलब अपना काम तो खुद करती है लेकिन ज्यादा इंटरेक्शन वगैरह नहीं होती किसी के साथ। अगर कोई आ जाए तो जस्ट अलग से रूम में बैठ जाती है। फिर उन्होंने जो क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट है उनके पास से उसका इलाज करवाने की कोशिश भी करी, वो मेडिसिन वगैरह जो प्रोसेस है वो सब होता है, लेकिन उसे कोई वो ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा। तो एक्चुअली मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि अगर मुझे समझना हो इस तरह के केस को तो किस चीज़ की स्टडी करनी चाहिए पर्टिकुलर केस की।
सो आईचैस की वेबसाइट पे देयर वुड बी अ केस स्टडी ऑन डिप्रेशन। पहले एक बार वो केस स्टडी चेक कर लीजिए, फिर उसके बाद अगर आपको कुछ फॉलोअप क्वेश्चन होता है then you can ask me the question next session के अंदर। There is already a, if I'm not wrong, there is already a case study on depression on the ICHARS website. The process will mostly be the same. Pushpal, is this clear? Is this okay?
यस थैंक यू सर। ओके सर, आई विल चेक।
If I check collision, then you can ask me again if you have any follow-up questions on that.
जी सर, थैंक यू सो मच सर।
Roshan, any questions that you wanted to ask?
Yes, sir. Sir, Rehab Center, SPYM. Sir, which deals in children de-addiction center. Sir, that's disturbing me, sir, that they believe that they are doing right, and it's uh, very much hard to convince them that what I believe is right, what you believe is wrong. Sir, according to you, what's the best way to convince them, sir?
This is to convince the children.
Huh.
What is the age group of those children, approx?
Sir, below 18.
But teenagers?
Huh, but teenagers. Huh.
Okay. So, see, over the years, one of the things I've realized is it's never a good idea to try to convince people that they're wrong. They will never agree with you. Even if they end up agreeing with you, it will be on the surface. Eventually, they will convince themselves that they were right and you were wrong. So, an easier way to work with that is rather than focusing on whether they're right or wrong, because then that the problem with addiction is a lot of people will say that I'm not the only one who does it, everyone in my age group does it. Right? So now, when you say it's wrong, it comes across as the entire act is wrong, which it may or may not be. But it's very difficult for people who are constantly seeing other people do the same thing
Exactly, sir. Exactly.
to agree with an idea that what you're saying is right.
Huh.
So, a better way of doing it is all right, check with them what are their goals in their life. What do they want to achieve in their life? Once
Yes,
you
sir.
find that out,
Huh.
check what steps do they need to take to achieve those things. Once you have those steps, yahan tak people will help you, because most teenagers, while they don't want to be told they're wrong, most of them are aspirational. They want to achieve things.
Some of the goals. Huh.
Right? So now once they have the task list, check with them in say how many of them you're doing.
Okay.
You'll realize there are certain tasks they're not doing because their addiction is coming in the way.
Yes, sir. Huh.
So it could simply be, I know I need to, so let's say someone is very motivated to do well in sports. Okay? I know I need to go for the morning sports practice. But raat ko, at times we go for a party and then morning I don't wake up because I had my own gala experience. So now the question is, if you want to do well in sports, okay, then you need to go for the morning practice. That the answer is. In order to go for the morning practice, what needs to happen? So I am not saying your substance is bad or good. But if it's coming in the way of what you want to do, right?
Okay.
Then
Okay.
then decide what you want to do. And that is the place where a lot of these youngsters will at least be willing to contextualize their behavior. Okay? They may still tell you, I don't want to give it up completely. Okay? They may at least begin with the idea कि हाँ कम से कम जिस दिन मुझे सुबह प्रैक्टिस के लिए जाना होता है ना उस दिन रात को मुझे नहीं करना चाहिए. So then the question is फिर क्यों करते हो? पता तो पहले भी था. So then what happens because of which you end up doing it? नहीं वो दोस्त जाते तो फिर मन करता है जाने का. So what needs to change ताकि आप नहीं जाओ? You know, if I remember that this will come in the way of my playing, तो मुझे याद नहीं रहता, वो अगले दिन याद आता जब गिल्ट भी होता है. Yes. So then that's where your when then statements anchoring comes in. That the moment your friends call you out to drink, let's take an example.
Yes, sir.
On a day on which next day you are supposed to go for practice. Then you realize this will hurt my practice. Okay? And then the anchor, whatever anchor they want to create for it. What you're really looking at is rather than trying to work on the entire behavior by terming it as wrong, which will be very difficult for them to digest.
Yes, sir.
You want to begin by contextualizing. Once it's contextualized, wo dheere dheere it begins to come in control, and you will realize they end up giving the rest of it also over a period of time.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So that will be the best way of, that will be the way I would work with these kids.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. In general, rather than focusing on problems, just ask people, what do you want to achieve in life? Is the current behavior helping you achieve it or hurting you? Uske baad, you don't need to explain anything to them. You don't need to justify anything.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Any other questions? Any other cases? No questions from the internship group? Okay, so in that case, we will first go off the streaming. So for those of you who have been watching us on any of the social platforms, thank you once again. I hope these interactions have been meaningful and interesting for you. I really hope that these interactions have been interesting enough for you to recognize that you need to join the courses that we offer, and you start exploring those courses, those course details. And I hope to see you soon in one of the courses going forward. For those of you who are psychology students, you can always enroll for the free internships that we offer. There are additional internships that will get launched in January through our mentorship students, especially if you're looking for more short-term 2 months, 3 months internships, which will be skill-based. So those will get launched from January or February onwards, and you can always explore the Visit MHP website for more details on that. For ICHARS courses, check out the ICHARS website, get in touch with the ICHARS staff, and I'm sure they'll be happy to connect with you and address any questions and queries that you have. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.